Hello friends! I wanted to share with you today how I am making face mask out of fabric and kind of walk you through the step-by-step process and hopefully help you out if you are hoping to make some of these at home. I'm a visual person, so I like watching tutorials, so I decided to make one. All right, let's get started. Okay, first we are going to take a 100% cotton piece of fabric. I have a scrap here that I think will do. And you're going to want to cut it 15 long by 7.5. So I'm going to put it on my board here and cut it. Then we are going to need to cut out a bias strip for the edges of your mats. You're going to lay your fabric flat across the grain, and then we are going to cut it at a diagonal. We need to have two strips that are at least about 7 inches long, and I am cutting my bias strips about 2 inches, which gives me enough space to press them easily. All right, so we're gonna do, so you see we're just cutting on the diagonal. This helps to prevent fraying at the edges, and it also makes it stretches. Okay, so now we have our materials. We have a strip or our fabric cut out and 2 strips of bias. Now we're gonna get to sewing. Okay, so our first step is going to be serging the short sides of our fabric. We're gonna serge both short sides. So we have both short sides serged. Now we are going to switch over to our regular sewing machine. Okay, so now we're gonna mark 1.5 inches from each edge of the fabric. This is going to be creating the pocket for the filter to go in. We have to have that opening. So I like to do 2 pins on each side, and then I will sew them. Oh. Sorry, I am not a good tutorial filmer. Okay, y'all see? Move this out of the way. There we go. All right, so I'm going to just sew right up on the edge of here with the back stitch. And then the same on the other side, right up to that pin that I measured. Okay, now we're gonna head to the ironing board. Okay, so now at this point, if I'm making quite a few of these, I like to make them in batches. I'll serge quite a few together, and then I'll do this first stitch together, and then I'll do all the pressing together. That way you're not going up and down a whole bunch. You can do them in stages. So right now what I'm doing is pressing that seam open that we just sewed. And then we're gonna flip it right side out and create a little pocket about 1/2 inch on the top here. To where you have the pocket right here, this little strip of fabric up here, and a nice clean edge now. So we're gonna press that flat. In a moment, we are going to top stitch this, and this is where the wire can go in to create a nose piece I'm using floral wire. You can use twist ties, or you can eliminate this step if you don't have any wire, but that is what this little pocket is for. Now, since I'm at the ironing board, I'm going to iron my bias strips. What I like to do is fold it in half once. Okay, fold it in half, fold it in half, and now we're going to fold it in half again on itself. So you see where that line is in the middle. We're going to fold one side to meet it over here, and then we are going to fold another side in. So you're kind of making a sandwich here, like a hot dog. So you've got those two folded in, and then voila, you'll have a nice clean edge on both sides. Let's repeat. Okay, now we've got two bias strips, we've got our fabric cut. Let's go back to the sewing machine. Okay, so now we are going to sew 3 different stitches. We are going to top stitch along this lower line. We are going to sew all the way around this rough edges, and then we are going to insert our wire and close it in there. So let's get started with that. So now we have we have the top stitching on this lower pocket fold, and then we have stitched all the way around the pocket. Now we are going to insert our wire in the top and then close it in. Okay, so this little floral wire is roughly 6.5 inches long. We are going to just put it into our piece here. You're going to bring it all the way up to where it's running flat across the top here, and then we are going to just stitch a line right below it along here. Okay, so now we have our face mask sewn all the way around. We have the wire inserted. Now all that's left is to pleat it, add the bias and elastic, and we will be good to go. So let's go back to the ironing board and pleat this. Okay, so the pleats, there's no real science to it. I just kind of fold that first top layer down a little bit. If we had to measure, that first pleat is about 1.5 inches. You're going to press it. Okay, making sure y'all can see this real well. So that first pleat right there is 1.5. Now we're going to grab the fabric and do the same thing, pull down a second time. And like I said, maybe I should measure, but I just kind of eyeball it. I've been sewing for about 10 years, and eyeballing is always my favorite. so you just make some even pleats, press them down, and look guys, it is starting to look like a face mask. Okay, now I'm gonna cut my elastic and we're gonna go apply the bias strip to the edges here. Okay, so for this part, I go in with my sewing machine and we're gonna stitch down those pleats to hold them in place. That makes applying your bias easier, so your fabric's not gonna move on you. Stitch it down in place. Okay, so we got our little mask here. Now for our bias strips. What we are going to do, this part is always a little tricky if you try to explain it. So I cut off the diagonal piece here because it's easier to work with a flat edge. I cut it off. Now we are going to open up the bias and we are going to match up right here. We're going to match up the rough edge here and then fold that little piece back. Okay, and where we pressed that line right here, we're going to sew it all the way down. Matching up the raw edges. I like to put one pin here. If you need to pin more, that's fine, but basically we're lining up the raw edge. We'll cut the excess off about 1/2 inch, leaving fold over. These scissors. I think my kids got a hold of these scissors and used them to cut something else because they are not cutting my fabric very well. Okay, so we have the bias lined up here. Looks like this on either side, and we are going to press here. We're going to sew with a 1/2 inch seam along the side here. Okay, so now we're going to fold that bias up and you're going to see that it'll create a nice little clean edge here and a clean edge on this side. I personally have found that it is easier to thread your elastic later if you sew these flaps down. So we're going to run a seam straight from here down to hold this in place. Okay, so now that we have those little edges sewn down, we're going to fold it kind of along the line that we had pressed and then fold it again. And so now we're going to have a casing for our elastic and it closes up the edges of our mask. So we're going to sew that. Okay, so now the sewing is done. We have our mask that has the shapeable noseband right there. There's a pocket for the filter to go in. It has the pleats to fit a wide variety of faces. Now we are going to take 2 pieces of 10-inch elastic and a safety pin. We're going to start with one we thread the safety pin, and you're going to thread your elastic through this casing that we created. And I've seen if you choose to just create bias strips for, sometimes it goes in easier on the other side. If you choose to create a mask with just ties rather than elastic, then you can do this step with the bias and just create one long piece of bias. I think about 25 inches per side works well, and you don't have to do the elastic. So I've got that one threaded through. Let's thread the other one. So now we've got two elastics here. You can tie a knot at the end of them. My mother-in-law has been helping, as well as my sister-in-law and aunt. They've been helping me thread these and prep these, but she's hand stitching them. You can tie it, hand stitch, or run it on the machine. I'll do it on the machine here to show y'all. I do 2 rows of stitches so that it is extra sturdy. Forwards and backwards. And this is what it looks like. Now we're going to do the other side. Okay, y'all, so the mask is complete. It has the pocket for a filter that can go in there. It's got the twistable or shapeable wire so that it can form to your face. It's got the elastic to go over the ears. I am working on getting these ready and donating to those who need them in our community, healthcare workers, doctors, nurses, CPS workers who are doing home visits, nursing home, all of the above, anybody who's immune compromised. I am trying to get these out to you. Thank you for watching. If you want to share this video, feel free. If you have someone who is making them and might need a visual tutorial. Thank you again to everyone who is out working during this crazy time. I hope everyone is doing well, and I hope y'all have a wonderful day. Thanks for watching.